It was a dark and stormy night the first time I watched The Lighthouse. The atmosphere was perfect. It was like Providence. It was as if nature itself recognized that this movie deserved the perfect backdrop and whipped itself into a frenzy to accommodate. The dull evening light shining through my window painted the room gray as the film began, and I was sucked into this world. The winds outside picking up and the rain coming down. I was in this torrent, right there with the characters, and I could not take my eyes off of the screen. And as it came to a close, my mind was racing with so many thoughts, so many questions, and these little shreds of answers that I'd picked up along the way, and I thought, let me go back and check that one scene again. And so I did. I went back and checked that one scene again, and hold on, this is all playing off of that other scene from earlier. And I backed up further and further, and eventually just let it play and soaked it all in again. And as I'm coming up to the conclusion, I'm realizing I just watched this movie twice in one sitting. Needless to say, I was a little impressed. And when I learned that the director of this movie also wrote and directed The Witch, I was dumbfounded, because The Witch is not very good. I watched The Witch at the recommendation of a normie friend of mine and found it to be underwhelming at best. Nothing left an impact on me, save for this just disgusting, dour ending. And that might sound like a backhanded compliment, but I found it very impactful and moving, and that was a hell of a lot more than I could say about the preceding 90 minutes. The next time we met up, I expressed my lukewarm reception of the movie and voiced my concerns, and to his credit, he held me to account. He challenged me on these points, and I appreciated it then as I appreciate it now, and I figured, hey, okay, let me watch that one over again. Maybe I was wrong. And I'll admit it, I was wrong. The movie was drastically worse than I realized. In stark contrast to The Lighthouse, this movie was an absolute misery to sit through a second time. If it was disappointing or predictable the first time, it was tedious and irritating the second time. If the plot was questionable the first time, it was visibly broken the second time, and in ways that I'd never have even noticed if not for revisiting the movie. What had been a mild distaste had evolved into an impassioned opposition. And I think King of Comedy is actually an apt comparison here. Ironic, I know. Now, I clowned on King of Comedy an awful lot in my Taxi Driver video, but it is a movie that I can actually recommend. It's actually quite funny and even exciting. For a limited time only. On the first viewing, I'm along for the ride. I'm curious to see the plot evolve, trying to figure out who these characters are. It left a positive impression on me, so much so that I was glad to watch it a second time a few months later. But it's on the second viewing you realize that what was enjoyable was that initial ride alone, and it's a completely fleeting feeling. And none of these jokes have staying power because I'm not really laughing at the content of the jokes, I'm laughing at the existence of the jokes. I'm laughing because I'm surprised by the presence of the jokes. And when the jokes no longer have the element of surprise, what are they? Just plot points in an otherwise unmoving story. There's no emotional depth, there's nothing to chew on, nothing to think about, just a few jokes that are ultimately pretty shallow, and if there's nothing else to latch onto, you're left completely at sea. But it's still got a leg up on The Witch. Even if it is only good for a single viewing, it can at least make for one very enjoyable viewing. The twists work, the reveals function, the characters are comprehensible and consistent. Look back over at The Witch, and the only consistency you'll find in these characters is their ability to make the stupidest choices available to them at any given opportunity. This is especially true if you watch with subtitles, which I encourage. This is what I did on my second viewing of The Lighthouse and my second viewing of The Witch, and if you ever intend to see either of these movies, I implore you, do not be afraid to watch with subtitles. Nobody's gonna bully you for it, least of all the DVD menu on the dark night with the subtitles for the hearing impaired. Oh, does little baby boo-boo need subtitles? You can't hear anything? Are you deaf? Are you a deaf little baby? It's so patronizing when movies do this, as if the only reason you'd want subtitles on is if you're hearing impaired. Who wrote this? What intern did this? Is it the same guy who made the DVD menu for The Witch? Yeah, maybe I'm not hearing impaired, maybe your sound mixing is just shit. You ever think about that, asshole? But that's not the problem with this movie. You're not watching with subtitles because of something that the movie does wrong. You're watching with subtitles because of something that the movie does very, very right. You'll notice early on how dense the language in this movie is, and the director deserves every bit of credit for his very studied writing style. If he's setting the movie in the 17th century, then he's going to write the dialogue to match the period, and we get this very rich, old English dialect that's effectively foreign to us today. You can really feel his passion for authenticity coming through here. The setting and the language feel very convincing because they're very well researched. And what's really great is that it's not hard to understand what the characters are communicating to each other. They're speaking plainly, just not in a dialect that we're too familiar with. And when you can read along with the subtitles and see what they're saying, you're much less likely to miss a word or mishear a line. This allows us to appreciate the style of the dialogue, but also highlights the substance of the dialogue. The words are well written, even if what's being said isn't. And I have to extend this praise to the visuals as well. The look, the feel of this movie, the setting, the costume design, all of this showcases the director's devotion to his craft and that of the whole team behind the project. This commitment to creating a period piece, which only makes it all the more disappointing that this movie is such a dud. The very first glaring problem that I encountered with this movie came before it even started. When you put the DVD into your DVD player, the very first thing you see before you can hit play is this scene. I'm not joking. This is the literal first look you get at the movie is this scene. The DVD menu plays this scene. What is this scene? What's happening here? There's this girl, this teenage girl, and she's undressing. She's naked. She's being stripped by somebody or for somebody. Well, that's kind of massively important. This is probably like a very important scene in the movie. Why are you showing this to me now? Like, you hit play and you meet this family and you see this girl and you've already seen like the ritualistic stripping scene. What was that? We just started. We literally just started. And I cannot overstate how big of a deal this is. You cannot downplay this. It's just a minor thing. You're criticizing the DVD menu? No! This is important. Of all the scenes they could have selected to introduce us to the film, they chose this one, and it just irrevocably tainted my viewing experience. Look, you can read body language very quickly, and this chick is a very talented actress. You know just from this small clip that this isn't just her undressing to change clothes in her bedroom. This isn't how people casually undress in private. Just from the way this scene is shot, as if she and her undressing are a spectacle, paired with, again, her body language, you can tell that she is undressing for somebody. Somebody has perhaps ordered her to undress or convinced her to undress, and there are major implications either way. This has to be some sort of spoiler, and they make you watch it before you can start the movie. A scene that at one point might have worked as a dramatic reveal or a tense moment has been spoiled for me before the film has even begun. This undermines not just this scene alone, but every scene featuring this character for the entire runtime of the movie. Every time I see this character, I already have in my head this image of what I know is to come. My first take, because again, this was my very first look at the movie, on my first viewing, was that this had to be one of two things. Judging by her body language, her uncomfortable facial expression, the dark, muted lighting, this all implies a sinister nature to what's going on. Whatever is happening is bad, and I was guessing that she's either being sexually abused, likely by a family member, or that she's involved in some sort of witchcraft, maybe signing her soul away to the devil. So if either of those things happen to be a major plot point in the movie, those have been ruined by this just insane creative choice, and I don't think this was the director. The production company, the distributor, A24, whoever was in charge of programming and printing the DVD made this choice. I don't imagine the director would want you seeing this scene before the start of the movie. He set the scenes in his movie in a specific order for a reason, because that's the way you're meant to consume the story. So I do not blame him for this, though it is, strangely, in keeping with the spirit of the intended viewing experience.
What went we out into this wilderness to find? Leaving our country, kindred, our fathers' houses.
So as I was saying, in the actual first scene, we meet this family as they're being expelled from a Puritan colony in New England over a religious dispute. The father character, the man of the house, William, seems to be very devoted to his religion, and he will not renounce it, even if it means accepting banishment from the community and entering into exile. Truly, he is a man of conviction, and he would never abandon his faith, even when facing death. So away they go, wandering into the wilderness. The atmosphere is very tense. You have this overbearing score, these horrific sounds when nothing overtly horrific is happening, this ease onto the woods. Right away, we get the feeling that there's something lurking in there. We ourselves feel the dread, the fear, the paranoia that you imagine these characters might feel, or are soon to feel. You might think that we're supposed to be getting into the mind of these characters, seeing through their eyes, but any pretense of this is dropped rather quickly. In the first few minutes of the movie, at the 6-minute and 15-second mark, it is definitively confirmed for you that there is, in fact, a witch. There is a witch in the woods. A witch stole and killed the baby. You know this is a fact now. And yet, you will spend the next 86 minutes watching characters flounder about, arguing over whether or not there is a witch. There's no mystery to unveil, no question as to what's happening. You're suggested the woods may be dangerous, and then immediately see that, without a doubt, they are. There's no suspense. Nothing was suspended. The reveal was given to you from the start.
And there just might be a witch that lives out in the woods, causing some serious problems for this family.
There's no might be a witch. There just is. There just is a witch. Now, The Lighthouse is a movie that lends itself to questions like this. A movie that makes you think, keeps you guessing, makes you ponder and distrust what you're seeing with your own eyes. The very opposite is true with The Witch. If something looks predictable, go ahead and predict it because you'll be right. Yeah, the spooky evil goat, the stereotypically satanic goat, well, surprise, it is demonic, just like the convention suggests. And the kids who dance and sing and chant around it, yeah, they're evil too. Who saw that coming? And the witch? Yeah, its existence and actions are explicitly confirmed for the audience some 5 minutes in. There's actually a lot to be gained by telling us less, particularly this early in the film. Let our mind wander, let us theorize, and then settle those questions with a satisfying reveal later. If you're going to show us characters argue about whether or not there's a witch, let me take a side. Or by all means, just assuage all doubt. There is definitely a witch. Who even cares?
They don't know if there's something in the woods. They're unsure of what's going on, and they all start to suspect one another.
But I don't. I can relate to and empathize with zero of these characters because I've been robbed of the opportunity. I cannot get into this headspace because the movie spoils itself. Repeatedly. We're watching characters argue about the truth of the disappearance while we already know the answer. It's like Schrodinger's cat, but you showed us the dead cat before you put it into the box, so asking us whether it's alive or dead means nothing.
Well, I know some people, one of their complaints about it is that it gives away any sort of mystery early on.
You can say that again, pal.
This was my chief complaint on my first watch, before the deeper plot issues became apparent. There's nothing to get attached to or invested in. I really am only watching a series of events, watching characters catch up to info that I already know. And I can't get invested in the characters themselves because they're inhuman and unrelatable, as we'll soon see. The less you know about this movie, the better your experience will be, but everyone who saw it opening weekend probably walked in with too much knowledge and hype to really get as much out of it as they could have if the film had the veil of mystery. This is an excerpt from The Witch Review, Beware of High Expectations by Leslie Coffin. Yeah, that is not the endorsement you think it is. This is a positive review, by the way, and that's the title. This movie makes what I consider one fatal flaw. Yeah, just one. Just the one. Careful, your low expectations are showing. Okay, I'm giving her a hard time here, but this is actually a fairly well-written review, and one that I largely agree with. She rightly praises the costumes, the set design, cinematography, acting, music, historical research, but appreciating those elements that work didn't help me feel that, collectively, the movie fires a little off course most of the time. The Witch is certainly a good movie, well made with moments of greatness, but the fact is, the overall experience I had felt strangely hollow. You're so close! If this is what you're saying after your first viewing, you're on the right track. Focus on that. Elaborate a little. What makes it feel hollow? Tell me. Is it the plot? The character writing? The reveals? What is this, gay Wonder Woman? What does she want? Attention! Gay Wonder Woman has a message for you! If you wanted me to be invested in these characters and their journey, it seems to me that it would be best if we learned alongside the characters. Let me take in information as they receive it. Let me see why they believe what they believe. Let me have a stake in this drama. But as it stands, I'm not a part of this conflict. I'm just an observer. I am never on the same level of these characters. There is no point at which I get to wonder whether or not there is a witch. The movie is called The Witch. Obviously there's gonna be a witch in it. Did you really think there wasn't gonna be a witch? The movie The Babadook is titled The Babadook, yet I spend much of the runtime trying to discern whether or not there is a Babadook. The movie is still about the Babadook. The title of the movie does not dictate the content of the reveal. Instead of The Witch, let's say there were theoretically a movie entitled The Wizard, and there's a cast of characters who all also believe there is a wizard, and they're off to see the wizard. And I also believe for the entirety of the journey that there is a wizard. Only for myself and the characters to all discover together at the end of the story that there is not, in fact, a wizard. Should they change the title of the movie because it is not accurate to the reveal? Or is the title an apt description of the subject of the story? There is no reason there had to be a witch just because the movie is titled The Witch. When I started the movie, I was under no impression that the movie was obligated to show me a witch. If there actually were not a witch, the movie could still be titled The Witch. The content of the movie informs the title, not the other way around. So yes, I did have a prevailing interest in actually being intrigued by the movie I was watching, regardless of the title. Going back to this hypothetical movie, The Wizard. If the director were to show the audience early into the movie that the wizard weren't real, not only would this somewhat hinder our ability to empathize with the characters at the moment of the reveal, but it would reframe the tone of the entire story. One of the most depressing reads I've ever encountered are Brienne's final chapters in A Feast for Crows. They're dismal and disheartening, an exercise in futility as Brienne searches hopelessly for the missing Sansa Stark, when we, the audience, already know what's happened to Sansa, and we know that Brienne will never find her. We know her quest was doomed from the start, and we're doomed to watch as she suffers and fails. These chapters fully capture the absolute feeling of hopelessness and immerse the reader in them, as we wish we could just speak to her and tell her that she's going the wrong way, help her on her quest in some way, but knowing full well that all we can do is suffer alongside her. The reader feels completely helpless. Seeing her inner monologue here, fearful that her quest is a lost cause, only hurts all the more because we know that she's ultimately right. I'll admit I actually teared up a little bit reading this again. It's really powerful. This book was penned by the former author George R.R. Martin, and serves as a reminder that this man once knew how to write, and damn well. These chapters aren't meant to build suspense or tension, they're meant to instill in you this sense of hopelessness and impending failure. Brienne's misery, Brienne's fears are now your own. I love this character. We want to see her succeed, but we know she can't. That's the tragedy. This can only be accomplished because we know something that she doesn't. We were provided this information for a reason. It's a knife stuck into the reader, and every one of these 8 chapters is another twist of that knife. If I knew that there were no wizard, this would not be as jovial a story. If I didn't know about Sansa's whereabouts, this would not be as dismal a story. What information you reveal to the audience matters. This is obviously not the only thing that sets these two stories apart, but it does accomplish something in the story. Unless that story is The Witch.
We're a Wolfstar Sam.
A witch! I've seen her.
I saw her.
I can empathize with these characters during this reveal because I have the exact same level of information that they do. I cannot empathize with these characters because I do not have the same level of information that they do. And this is different from Brienne because the goal of this reveal isn't to synchronize our feelings with that of any character in the story. So what does this reveal accomplish? In short, nothing. This reveal doesn't elevate anything. It accomplishes nothing except for limiting the range of enjoyment. It does not bring me down to any character's level emotionally, it places me on a plane above them. This is third-person omniscience handled pitifully. And this obviously isn't to say that there's something inherently wrong with the third-person omniscient point of view in storytelling, because there isn't. It's simply being employed very poorly in The Witch.
What witch?
To demonstrate my point, consider what would happen if this scene were cut entirely from the movie. Would this hinder any character's development? Would it adjust our perspective on any one of the family members? No, because it's completely detached from them, and giving us this information only detaches us from them as well. These are two very disparate points of view, and you've assigned me to this one and not this one, and I'd much prefer to be over here.
And so it's like, oh, is there going to be a witch? Is it going to be like a psychological thing, or is there really a witch? Oh, there's a witch. There's a witch, and it's doing something completely fucking vile in the first 5 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, and it sucks. But I presume you're going to explain to me why that's a good thing and not a bad thing, right?
So then it's just like, I don't know, to me that doesn't dissolve the tension. It's like the old Hitchcock thing of like, we know there's a bomb under the table, but the characters don't.
How many different colors of tooth does one man need? I'm sorry, he's actually saying something pretty insightful here. This Hitchcock reference he makes actually gave me pause, and multiple times. I had to reevaluate. Maybe he's got a point. So let's explore this, the Hitchcock thing of the bomb under the table. What's he referring to?
4 people are sitting around a table, talking about baseball, whatever you like. 5 minutes of it, very dull. Suddenly, a bomb goes off, blows the people to smithereens. What do the audience have? 10 seconds of shock. Now take the same scene and tell the audience there is a bomb under that table and will go off in 5 minutes. Well, the whole emotion of the audience is totally different because you've given them that information that in 5 minutes' time that bomb will go off.
Well, this seems like a pretty sound defense, aside from the fact that it doesn't hold water at all. In fact, this is not a binary that's applicable to this movie, suspense versus surprise. You'll notice that I've never once argued that I wanted a surprise, because that's not what the problem is with this reveal. Let's look again at this portrait of a scene that Hitchcock painted for us. Notice how the characters aren't debating whether or not there's a bomb under the table. Notice how none of them are part of a religion that believes there's a bomb under the table. This theoretical scene works because the characters are completely oblivious while the audience is not. They have no reason to suspect there's a bomb under the table.
Now the conversation about baseball becomes very vital because they're saying to you, don't be ridiculous, stop talking about baseball, there's a bomb under there.
When the characters are oblivious, then you can have a question about whether you're instilling suspense or surprise in the audience based on whether they are oblivious. But that's not the case in The Witch, because these characters aren't oblivious. Many of them do suspect that there is a witch, and they do talk about it. They are all part of a religion that is inclined to believe in witches. So revealing the existence of the witch later in the movie wouldn't be an act of surprise, it would be an act of confirmation, because we, and the characters, all suspect that there may be a witch. It's not a surprise to us. You cannot confirm what you do not suspect. And if you suspect it, the confirmation is not a surprise. The question of when you give confirmation as to the true nature of what's occurring is more a question of mystery versus suspense, rather than suspense versus surprise.
There's a great confusion between the words mystery and suspense. And the two things are absolutely miles apart. You see, mystery is an intellectual process, like in a whodunit. But suspense is essentially an emotional process. Therefore, you can only get the suspense element going by giving the audience information.
I originally thought he was referring to this quote and arguing that the movie worked as a suspense piece rather than a mystery. Of course, that's not accurate. He was really arguing against a surprise reveal, which is not only something that nobody asked for, but something that would be entirely incongruous with the film and how it's written, which is why nobody asked for it. But he is still invoking the concept of suspense, as explained eloquently by Hitchcock himself, and put very simply by this commenter here. Suspense is created by giving information to the audience. Mystery is created by withholding information from the audience. So if I'm arguing that information ought to have been withheld from the audience, am I at fault for misunderstanding the movie? Am I looking for mystery in a film that is intended for suspense? Because I guess that's what I'm looking for, if we view this through this binary, is a mystery story. Now, why is that? Is it because the dialogue is written as though it's a mystery?
Is it going to be like a psychological thing, or is there really a witch?
Why would a viewer even need to question whether this is meant to be a psychological thing? Is it because the intentions aren't clear, or the pieces at play aren't well handled? It's not as though I saw this scene and said, oh damn, the mystery's ruined. It's that I'm later into the story and it behaves as though it was supposed to be a mystery. I'm retroactively asking why this was done because it damages the scenes that follow. But there's no sense dwelling on what I'd rather see in the movie. The fact is, it did give us the early reveal. So we're building suspense, right? Again, this sounds like a solid defense, backed up by what Hitchcock said. The audience has to be informed to build suspense, and informed we were. But informing us isn't enough. This becomes abundantly clear when you watch his film Rope and see how vastly different the function of the reveal is. In fact, it's not a reveal, it's the setup. Rope shows us this less than 3 minutes into the movie, which is to say, just 58 seconds after the opening credits. Unlike The Witch, this doesn't detract from the movie at all, because the conflict of the movie is not dependent on whether there is a body in the table or not, it's dependent on whether the killers can obscure this fact long enough to get away with murder. Every time a character makes some morbid statement or double entendre, I feel this sting of excitement, just as Philip here must. I'm listening with fascination to their every word, just as Philip must be, because we're both invested in seeing whether or not he gets caught. I'm feeling the dread that these characters are. I'm pulled into their mental state. The same is not true in The Witch. I'm not part of their theory crafting. I've been denied this because I was given too much info. This would make more sense if I knew there was a witch and the family did not suspect there was a witch. Then you'd have a reasonable comparison. But as it stands, you're just inhibiting my ability to relate with these characters. If I didn't know the truth, I could relate to everyone trying to piece the truth together, because I'm trying to piece the truth together too. But you've cut that in half, by revealing to me that half of them are right and half of them are wrong. In reality, I can relate to 0 of these characters because they're all stupid and their stupidity drives the plot, but Rope works because I'm emotionally invested in all of these characters the whole time. I get excited when a character begins to suspect something. I feel this heightened state they must be in, the heightened emotional state they must be in. That's what these have in common. There are different tools in play being used to different ends, but both work to create an emotionally moving experience for the audience. And not a temporary shock, not a bomb under the table, but something that permeates the entire story. Because a twist or reveal that bears no emotional weight is just a meager plot point.
And I dare say you've seen many films which have mysterious goings-on. You don't know what's going, why the man is doing this, why that, and you're about a third of the way through the film before you realize what it's all about. And to me, that's completely wasted footage, because there's no emotion to it.
This is a very harsh condemnation of the concept of the mystery genre and a perspective that I don't quite agree with, but let's see how his standard would apply to his own film. Instead of starting off with the murder, let's say that we started with the guests arriving at the party. We see them talking, we see a couple of characters looking a little uneasy or nervous. We're trying to figure out why, but we aren't feeling it ourselves. It has no emotional weight.
And to me, that's completely wasted footage.
This all elevates the movie. It's meticulously constructed. This, again, does not elevate the movie. It doesn't build suspense, it doesn't heighten any tension, and by your own admission, it turns off at least some portion of the audience, myself included. And the defense you're invoking isn't a defense at all. It's a condemnation. Lines like this, scenes like this, exchanges like this are not compatible with a movie of this ilk. If I'm watching It's a Wolf, no it's a witch, no it's a wolf, and I already know that it's a witch, it's not suspenseful, it's frustrating. It's irritating and redundant for the audience. And while not every movie is going to fit into this box of being either suspense or mystery, this film doesn't work when viewed through either lens. So maybe it's best not to bring Hitchcock into this, because along these lines, this film is constructed as though it's supposed to be a Hitchcock suspense, but written like a whodunit mystery. And a very bad one at that. There's nothing suspenseful about watching characters say something that we know isn't true. There's gotta be more to it than that. That alone does not elicit the emotional response you want to get out of a suspense thriller. And if I already know what isn't true, you don't exactly have a mystery on your hands. So either way you swing it, the movie is very poorly structured at the very least. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna edit out that scene. Here's my little fan edit of The Witch.
Boo! Sam? Samuel!
Well, I'd say that flowed pretty naturally. Oh look, when I get to this scene and they're worried about whether they can find the baby, I'm a little worried too. I wonder if they can find the baby. Oh, and here, you say a wolf took the baby? Huh, that's very possible. I feel very involved right now. But no, we get none of that. We are told the answer before the question was even asked.
The whole movie as a whole congeals so well with everything else.
Well, it just sucks you in with the atmosphere and the look of everything.
It's an atmospheric piece. It's a tension-filled movie. It's disturbing. It's strange. It keeps you engaged by all those elements.
I was engaged before this scene. I was engaged just from the suggestion of a threat, and even the confirmation of a threat without the reveal of what the threat was. The last couple of angles that I could approach this scene from are believing that it's either meant to set the atmosphere or the stakes. But as I just described, it's redundant on either of those points. I suppose it shows us the level of threat we're dealing with, that there's a creature in the woods that's capable of stealing and killing a baby, but I already suspected that. And I already knew that. Like, forests are there are plenty of creatures in forests that are capable of killing babies, so you've hardly raised the stakes at the consequence of dispelling all mystery that you'll later rely on. So, I say again, the inclusion of this scene is strictly to the detriment of the narrative. But look at the scary witch, look at the scary images on screen, isn't that scary?
Oh my God.
Do not worry, amigo. If they find it, my men will be there to take it away from them.
They do not suspect you?
Me? A simple mariachi? They do not even take me into account. I must get back now.
Maverick, Season 1, Episode 24. Here's a hell of a scene. Here's atmosphere. This is a tonal shift in the episode. Just the look of it, the shadows, the lighting. It's intimidating. This is the introduction of a new threat, and not the confirmation of a threat that's hitherto already been alluded to. It heightens the tension, shifts the atmosphere, and is of consequence in the narrative. And it's important. If this scene weren't in the episode, the climax would feel like a very jarring contrivance rather than a well-substantiated conclusion to all that we've seen thus far.
I'm the spy.
So in conclusion, and I use that term lightly, there's nothing inherently wrong with divulging important information to the audience early on. But note the key word here, important. There has to be a reason for the reveal, a good reason, which elevates the story. Or else you're going to end up with some people having this complaint.
Where it's like you're watching this family turn on each other and you're just waiting to see like when it all falls apart.
Trust me, you don't need to wait long. This story falls apart very quickly. Now, where were we? Oh, that's right, we're at the very fucking beginning of the movie. We formally meet Thomasin, deep in prayer, and soon see her caring for her newborn baby brother. What a nice young lady. I sure hope that this scene doesn't happen later in the film. It would kind of suck to know that this scene is coming up before I even get to know this character or what she's about. But she's playing with the baby on the edge of the woods for some reason when somebody or something steals the baby. I sure hope it's not a witch. Now, about 5 days has passed since we last left our characters. William volunteered to look for the baby. Straws were drawn to see who'd help him. Caleb lost.
Thy mother's not slept a night since. We can search no more, Caleb. We cannot. If not a wolf, then hunger would have taken him yet.
They've looked everywhere, but they've had no luck. I wonder why. Well, that conversation is over. Let's go hunt for some rabbits!
Let's to the wood. I've been laying traps for some while now, even before this new misery.
Within the wood?
Wilt thou not help thy father?
You and Mother have always forbade us to set foot there.
So, what have you been doing? I thought you were searching for your lost baby. Where have you been looking? Your fucking cabbage patch? How did you not go search the woods? The solitary thing that you know about your missing infant is that Thomasin was playing with him on the edge of the woods, and he went missing, and there was a rustle in the woods. The literal only sensible place to search is the woods, but you haven't been doing that? You'll take your son into the woods to hunt for rabbits, but not to search for your missing child. And you put these lines right next to each other, like I'm not supposed to ask this question. Son, sometimes we have to bend the rules because we can't grow corn. But not to find babies, only because of corn. A search party could have been a good pretext for why they go into the woods. You could join these two topics of conversation, have one complement the other, and eliminate the problems with both. Justify their trip to the woods today by telling us that it's not their first time, that the woods are hardly off limits after a week of having explored them looking for Samuel. Like, yes, we know they have to eat, but maybe give us a good reason why they're only now breaking their one rule. So Thomason's over here and does this. And that's the scene. She spends another 5 seconds walking, and we cut back to the woods. Excellent. They have themselves a nice little Bible study session before setting their traps. Again, William here's a very pious man, and the entire family must be pretty superstitious if this normal-looking forest has been off-limits for so long. Makes me wonder why they built their house next to the evil woods.
He had disappeared, not 1 week past, yet you and Mother utter not his name.
He's gone, Caleb.
Tell me,
Tell thee what?
is he in hell?
Caleb.
Mother will not stop her prayer.
Ah yes, baby Samuel was unbaptized, and much of the family is convinced that he can't have made it into heaven because of this. Mom's really beat up about that, not only grieving the loss of her child, but the loss of the soul of her child. It might even be Dad's fault. He's the one who got us kicked out of town, after all. This is a good plot device, using the family's religious convictions to drive a wedge between them. And on top of that, Mom here doesn't seem to believe that it was a wolf that took her baby, and she thinks that there just might be a witch that lives out in the woods. These characters are very wary of anything that looks even vaguely demonic, and that seems to make sense given their background. Unrelated to that, let me introduce you to Black Phillip. If I gave you a lineup of goats and asked you to pick the one that looked the most evil, I'd wager to guess that you might pick this one. That's because this is a standard trope. When you want to assign a dark connotation to something, you often color it black. The word dark has itself a negative connotation. So if you take one look at this goat and say, yeah, that thing's evil, that thing's the villain, I regret to inform you that you're right, because this movie has nothing deeper going for it than playing directly into tropes. So when... oh, what's this? Thomason, here's something. Oh, it's the twins singing a song about the goat. The stereotypical evil trope goat. Well, that seems bad. I can't get into this headspace where I'm wondering about who or what the twins are or if the goat is evil when I already know that this movie is so forthright with its reveals. Helped in no small part by the DVD menu. It's more likely that whatever is being presented in this scene is going to be exactly what it appears, so let's actually take a look at what's in this scene. Because it's a very important scene, though I don't think you're supposed to notice that it's an important scene. You see the twins are singing a song for this goat, and if you're watching without subtitles, you might not understand what they're saying, so let me read it out for you. Black Phillip, Lord of this world. Black Phillip, evil possessor. Wait a minute. My mistake. Those are the lyrics to a Black Sabbath song. I pulled up the wrong lyrics. My mistake. The real lyrics are actually much more explicit than that. Black Phillip, a crown grows on his head. Black Phillip, to Nanny Queen is wed. Black Phillip, king of all, king of sky and land, king of sea and sand, we are your servants! Okay, so the kids are evil. No question. The kids are fucking evil, no question. They are cavorting with Satan himself on the front lawn. But at least nobody hears the... oh, wait, Thomason does. Well, at least the dad does. Oh, wait, no, there he is. He showed up right as they were singing the part about he's their king and they're his servants. Well, at least... Enter Puritan Christian mother of 5, Catherine. Now, what do we know about Catherine? Oh yeah, she's upset about the loss of her newborn baby, and she believes that there's witchery afoot, right? She's very concerned about losing her children's souls to Satan. So knowing all this about her character, let's see how she reacts when she hears her 2 youngest living children singing this satanic anthem to their Satan goat. Oh, it doesn't even register. If some conservative Baptist mom heard her kids listening to this in the 1970s, she'd have a fit. But you expect me to believe that zealous Puritan mother in the 1670s hears something worse, and, well, it's just going right over her head. You have got to be freaking kidding me. There is no way. Have you ever heard of the Goat of Mendez? Have you ever heard of Baphomet? Have you ever heard of any number of paintings entitled The Witch's Sabbath? Oh, but she's been in the house this whole time. The house that they've been circling while they chant about how the goat is their king. Doesn't even register. But every bit of what I've just said over the past few minutes should be going through the head of these characters right here. And they don't need subtitles to notice what's happening here. This is being spoken in their own dialect right in front of them. Everyone is here. You're all invited. The whole family are gathered around to watch this recital. And y'all want to call this movie suspenseful, but I can't even suspend my disbelief past the 15-minute mark. This is absurd and entirely out of character for this mother at the least. Because these parents are supposed to be like religious fundamentalists, right? That's kind of the point of every one of their lines of dialogue. So I guess the director's depending on us not to notice what's happening here. Not because he's worried about premature reveals, mind you, but because if we do notice, we'll realize how broken the plot is. When the movie depends on you not to notice what's happening so that the stakes work, that's not very good. And if you're watching without subtitles, you may not notice quite what's happening. This might seem like a fine scene. The kid's doing something vaguely creepy, but not explicitly demonic. It might seem like a good little clue, foreshadowing even. But this isn't foreshadowing, it's just, what, foretelling? If a character just declared, "It's me, I'm Voldemort," at the beginning of the movie, that wouldn't be foreshadowing the eventual reveal of Voldemort, and we wouldn't be surprised when it's happened. Oh, he's Voldemort! He poisoned the coffee!
It was me. I poisoned it.
I don't remember asking you a goddamn thing.
When later in the movie it goes, "Oh look, it's the witch!" Like, yeah, I know it's the witch. You already told me there's a witch. I'm not impressed. Look, the twins are possessed by Satan. Yeah, I knew that already. You already showed me this. Oh, but the goat is evil. Yeah, I know.
I know all about it. I've known about it for a long time.
Throughout the movie, these are played as though there's supposed to be a twist or a big reveal when they've obviously been revealed already or were predictable applications of tropes from the start. Because, like, a twist is effectively a payoff with limited setup, right? The warning signs were there, but you didn't even know to look for them. Take Hateful Eight, for example. From the time that the team enters the haberdashery, Warren knows that something is amiss immediately. Nobody else does. He sees every one of the clues, but we don't know what he's seeing. He knows what to look for, but they don't. We don't. He's withholding information from the others and the audience. The first time you're watching the movie, you're effectively seeing it through John Ruth's eyes. Even if you suspect something is amiss, you don't know what that is, and you don't know what to look for. Warren does. When you watch the movie a second time, you know what the reveal will be and you can spot the clues. Now you're seeing the room from Warren's point of view. You know why that blanket is there, and Warren likely figured that out as well. We only know what to look for when these things have been revealed to us, and the narrative falls into place. When you watch The Witch a second time, you realize that the clues, and I'm doing air quotes for that, are just right in front of the characters' faces. And unlike John Ruth, who isn't going to be hyper-vigilant about the location of a blanket, these characters are supposed to be hyper-vigilant, but aren't because we need drama. It's as if these characters have a switch on their back, and they just toggle between being hyper-vigilant fundamentalists on the lookout for witches and satanic happenings, and being completely oblivious lemmings. What would happen if these guys walked into the room and characters just immediately started singing about how much they love poisoning coffee? Coincidentally, a character actually does pick up a guitar and sing a song revealing their sinister plan in this movie. But here's the important bit. What happens after a character reveals their sinister plan? Another character reacts to it. This is a very direct comparison now. When characters in The Witch sing songs advertising their allegiances, the other characters in the scene do not react. The switch is flipped, and they are now deaf and oblivious so that later in the film, they can do whatever is the most dramatic. Even if the song were completely innocuous, who taught them the song? Kids of this age do not script and choreograph songs of this nature. It's very obviously written by an adult or a demon. If you wanted to have Thomason notice the kids doing something suspicious, you could have accomplished this in a better, dare I say, more subtle way. One that doesn't involve the kids advertising their Satanism to everyone within earshot. Like, that's the main thing. What a terrible plot point. What an awful thing to write into your story. No subtlety, no question as to what's going on. It's so overt. Characters just prancing about, proclaiming their allegiances to the satanic icon living in their yard. Especially taking into account that this line comes up later in the same movie.
Ask the twins, then. They spend all day long babbling to that horned beast. They know well his voice.
Got to.
The adversary oft comes in the shape of a he-goat. And whispers, aye, whispers,
You mean to tell me that this character is familiar with these tidbits of Christian folklore, but these two aren't? The two people who have collectively been alive for quadruple her lifespan have not enough familiarity with Satan's depiction as a goat that they can even draw this correlation? I ask again, are they or are they not supposed to be paranoid religious fundamentalists? Are they even human? Here's that lineup. Here are the Google image results for goat. And here are the Google image results for black goat. The literal first image is satanic iconography, because the image of a black goat is irreparably linked with the depiction of Satan. You don't have to scroll down far before you find one of several Baphomets either. By all means, you can own a black goat. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, look at this thing. It's adorable. But the first time my children start singing to it, we've got a problem.
Here's Lucifer. You know it.
We are now well beyond the confines of a discussion about suspense. This is no longer a question of how I felt watching the movie or the level of my personal investment. We are now in broken plot territory. Regardless of whether any viewer finds this predictable or shallow, the characters themselves ought to be predicting it long before we are. If not overt Satanism, this is what would appear to be overt Satanism in the eyes of these characters as they've been characterized. That the kids are singing to and about the goat is a fact. That this is within earshot of at least the majority of the family is a fact. That this goat matches the standard depiction of Satan is a fact supported by this film. The implications of what is occurring are very serious, and it is my argument that these characters ought to react to it. I don't think that that's an unreasonable ask, but I also don't think that this scene is indefensible. So let's go through a few potential defenses. They didn't hear it / didn't notice. As I've said, I think this conflicts with the characters as they've been characterized. I believe they'd make an active effort to listen to what their kids are singing, especially given the circumstances. Catherine herself is vigilant enough to notice small interactions between Caleb and Thomason that she'll criticize her for later. This is clearly a very attentive character, or supposed to be. Catherine is biased. She undoubtedly is, but fearing for the loss of these two kids' souls is not precluded by a dislike for her eldest daughter. She still has an interest in protecting the kids who she does love, and distresses at their loss, as we see several times throughout the movie. Catherine was inside the house. She couldn't hear it. I think this is a stretch, but I could buy it if the film attempted to account for this scene in this way. Give us a quick 2-second shot of Catherine inside the house. The twins' voices are muffled, and she's either dozing off, trying to get some sleep, or muttering to herself in prayer. We see she's incapable of having heard the song. Quick, simple, there you go. All of those are perfectly believable, and it's a shame that none of them are actually present in the movie to bolster this scene. As it's written, I'm more inclined to believe that Catherine was sitting by the door, waiting intently for William and Caleb to return, and I think this read is solidly supported by the text, as she rushes out to confront them as soon as she hears their voices. William didn't hear the full song and doesn't have enough info to jump to conclusions. Hey, if William's going to hear a portion of the song, maybe it shouldn't be this portion of the song, the most explicit and damning portion of the song. This is a very easy fix if the director had cared to fix it. And all of this could have been prevented with just small changes. This scene ought to be very consequential and is held together by scotch tape that isn't even in the film. If you have to interpret in reasons that this scene isn't broken, that means it's a weak point in the script. I don't think it's unreasonable, given the significance of this scene and the potential ramifications, to want it more solidly assembled. I shouldn't need to ask these questions, but that I am now suggests to me that the author never even considered them. To me, these are lessons to learn, and I would hope that in anything that I write in the future, that I'll reread a scene and ask, what does it mean that these characters are here? What are they seeing? What are they hearing? Is there a specific way they ought to be behaving? And if I drop the ball on that, I would hope that anyone proofreading would pose these questions to me. But here's the kicker. Even if every one of these defenses are solid enough to salvage this scene, this is not the only time they sing a song, or even the only song that they sing.
But Philip is an American, he rules the land with me.
I cannot abide your songs.
Yes, the movie has doubled down in my favor to support my argument. Thank you, Robert Eggman. Thank you for your gracious contribution. Because, who's that? Who's that right there? Oh, there she is. It's Puritan Mother of Five, Catherine. Oh, this shit is so busted. If there was any ambiguity before, it's gone now. She is 100% hearing these songs and these lyrics about how Black Phillip is their king, and she is sitting 3 feet away from Mercy, and she doesn't care. Are you currently a religious fundamentalist who's worried about witches? No, because that would stop the plot from occurring. Flip that switch. We need you to be brain dead in this scene. I'm editing, and I had to come check this. These two scenes are literally back to back. They're literally one right before the other. Where is it? Oh, there's witches. There's witches everywhere. And then the next scene, the literal next scene, is just witches, Satan, goats. What is that? What are those? And this brings us back to the core of the problem here. I do not believe you. You couldn't get away with this in Kickapoo, let alone Jamestown. I can't believe this shit. I can't. There are people alive today who won't let their kids watch Harry Potter because the word witchcraft is in it. But these people just don't care. How am I supposed to care what happens to them if they don't care what happens to them? I'm finally receiving the exact same level of information that they are, and they're not reacting to it, but I'm supposed to? This is how you want to build the emotional stakes in your story? These are the people that I'm supposed to be invested in? There's nothing I could reach out to these characters and say, because they're inhuman. They're planks that speak and act in defiance of the basic logic surrounding them and their own internal logic. The best that I can gather is that they drank plenty of salt water on the way over from England. But it's fine, it doesn't matter, because you weren't supposed to notice this. The movie is actively punishing you for paying attention. The payoff only surprises you if you simply don't observe what's happening on screen. If you are paying attention to what's happening, you realize that the other characters have to be willfully deaf, dumb, and blind for the plot to even occur. And again, there's no intrigue, no nuance, no guesswork, no inferences to be made, no theory crafting, no immersion. You know, everything that makes The Lighthouse great. You're told explicitly what's going on, and watching characters slowly catch up to your knowledge level while ignoring the blatant demonic happenings around them in contradiction to both their character and the setting of the story. And it does get worse.
I be the Witch of the Wood, and I have come to steal ye.
Oh boy.